Dealing with graphing from slope-intercept form today. This is the first time we have graphed actual lines, and we're going to use a form that we've already dealt with, so it makes it something that we already have information about. This is what we're going to start with. We're going to start with slope-intercept form. We've done this before. We've talked about this. We've talked about how to find slope. We've manipulated it. We solved for y. We've done everything. Here we're going to graph with it. Write down the equation. Guys, slope-intercept form is what? There you go. Y equals mx plus b. What does the m represent? Slope. There are three formulas for slope that we have. They are y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. They are also the change in y over the change in x. And the last one is going to be rise over run. That's the main one you'll deal with today. Let me make it very clear because we're going to be dealing with graphs. That is the formula you use with graphs most of the time. Alright, what is the b? It is y-intercept. It is the y-intercept. It's where the graph touches the y-axis. It's this point right here. This is it. This is the y-intercept. It is always in the form, guys. It's on the y-axis. You don't go left or right. The first number is always going to be what? 0. Every single time. Every time you have the y-intercept, the first number is 0. Because that's what makes it end up on the y-axis. Because you don't ever move left or right. Alright, so this point is the y-intercept. This is the equation for the line that we're going to be graphing, the y equals mx plus b. And this point is written in the form 0b. Does anybody have any questions on the basics about slope-intercept form before we actually graph with it? That's just review of concepts we've already done. Anything at all, guys? Just want to make sure before we start graphing. Alright. I will tell you that we will be doing 2 regular lines and then 2 special cases. So if you have questions, you need to ask, because the last 2 are just special cases. They're the Hoy and Bucks that we've talked about many times before. It's going to show up, and it's going to be a major part of what you test on. So I need to make sure you've got that down. So on these first 2 examples, if you have a question, make sure you ask me. Okay, guys, here we go. So it says graph the equation. We've got the equation right here. Y equals negative 3x plus 7. We're going to start off by finding the m. Guys, what is the m in this problem? The slope is whatever is in front of your x. So it's going to be negative 3. Now, we're going to talk more about dealing with that. What? It's because it's printed weird though. Yeah. Is that why? Yes. Unfortunately, for some reason, our BizHub will not print the first slides on the left-hand side. Strange as it is, it just will. They have gotten tech people from the county, everybody trying to figure out why it puts them on the right-hand side, but it just does. And it's our brand new printer, so it's the one that I use because it's fast. I'm sorry about that. Okay, guys, here we go. Slope is negative 3. The y-intercept is 0 what? 0, 7. Whenever you are graphing, you are going to start with the y-intercept. This is going to be the first point that you put on your graph, and then we're going to talk about how you manipulate and use your slope. Okay, here we go. The point 0, 7 is on the y-axis. You don't go left or right. You go up to 7. Very clearly put that point right there on the y-axis. You do not label it because you're graphing the line, not the individual points. We're going to label the line in a minute. Alright? The next thing that you're going to do is graph the other points on here. To do that, you're going to use your slope. From this point, you're going to go with your slope and rise and run from there. Guys, listen. Do you see there's only one number here? You can't rise and run when there's only one number. We're going to rewrite this as a fraction. It's going to be negative 3 over what? 1, because every whole number is over 1. If you have a slope, I would just automatically write it as a fraction when you're pulling it out because you're going to need to graph with it. So to go from here, you would go down 3 and to the right 1. Why did I go down 3? Because the top number is -3, which means to go down 3, and the bottom number is +1, which means to go to the right 1. Now guys, eventually what we're going to do is graph two equations, two lines on the same graph where we're looking for where they intersect. It's called a system of equations. So the more points you put, the better off you are, plus your lines are going to be more accurate. So from there we continue down 3 to the right 1, 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 till we can't do any more going in that direction. Yes, you need to put all of them on there for now. Eventually, if you get better at this, I will let you stop. But for now, put all the points on there. There is still one more point. Okay? Do you see that we can't go down and to the right anymore, but we could move a different direction from here and get the points on this side of the line. But we're going to have to manipulate our slope to be able to do that. Guys, remember I told you it doesn't matter if the negative's on the top or the bottom? So here we go. If I rewrite it as 3 over -1 and move my negative sign to the bottom, that 3 on top now means that I'm going to move what direction 3? Up. I would go up 3, and then what direction for that -1? Left. Do you see it still puts it on the line? It just goes the opposite direction. Guys, if you go down and to the right, the opposite way would be up and to the left. Down to the right, up to the left. We go the opposite for both directions. Okay, guys. Now, you'll get used to this as we graph. Anytime we graph, you're going to use your ruler. I told y'all that I would suggest you bring your own, but I do have them too. So if you do not have one, we're going to pause right now. Anybody on that side of the room? Actually, let's do it. The people in the front row, go get them for everybody on that side. Okay? Guys, Luke, guys, get up. Go get one for each person in your row. So, just one extra, you and one extra. They're right there. Okay. Everybody that's in the front of these rows, go get one for everybody in your row. Count how many people are in your row before you go. If you've got your own, you're good. Now, as we graph more and more, you're going to want to prick those up as you come in, just like you do calculators. It's going to be something we do a lot, so guys, we're going to be graphing for a while. Pick them up until we tell you not to as you come in. Okay, you got to put them up too. If you leave them on the desk, I'm just going to put them away and we won't have them. So please put them up when you're done with them. Okay, guys, here we go. Draw your line. It needs to extend all the way through your graph. Listen to me. It needs to extend all the way through your graph completely so that it goes out either end. That has to do with inequalities. When we shade these later, you're going to understand why. Get it to go right through the center of those points, extending all the way through your graph like this. It has arrows on the end because it is a line, not a segment. It does not end. It goes on forever, so make sure it's got arrows on either end. And then just like we labeled the points before, we're going to label the line. Guys, you label the line with the equation of the line. The equation of the line is y equals -3x plus 7. Now listen, I don't care if you label it at the top or the bottom, but please try not to label it where I have to try to read through the grid. Put it outside the grid. You're extending the lines out anyway. Put it outside the grid. You just graphed a line, guys. Anybody have any questions? Okay, let's do the next one. Here we go. Okay, so I'm going to ask you again. This is slope. What do we get for a slope? 3/4. This is for your y-intercept. It's going to be the point 0 what? -2. Which point? I just told you. What do you start with? What are you going to start with when you graph? The 0, -2. Your y-intercept is always where you start, guys. This is what you're starting with. It gives you a starting point on your graph. It is always on the y-axis, so it's easy to find. 0 means don't go left or right, go down to -2. Guys, it's called the y-intercept, so it has to be on the y-axis. The only exception is going to be Buck's lines, and we'll talk about those when we get to that problem. From there, we are going to use the slope to rise 3 and run 4. Rise 3 and run 4. Guys, positive, positive, so that means up and to the right. You're going to do it again. Rise 3 and run 4. Just on those 2 points. Anybody have any questions? Can I keep going up and to the right any more than that? No. So I need to manipulate my slope so I can go the other direction. Guys, what is the same thing as a positive? Not a negative, but you got the right idea. We've said it like 100 times in here already this year. A double negative is the same thing as a positive. So you're going to manipulate your slope and make them both negative. You already went up and to the right. The opposite of up and to the right is going to be down and to the left. Down and to the left. Guys, listen to me. These are easy to check. If it doesn't make a straight line, you didn't graph it correctly. Okay? It's easy to tell if you've done it correctly. Put your ruler on there. If it's not a straight line, you got to fix it. Okay, here we go. Let's draw your line through there, extending it all the way through your graph. Making sure it goes right through the center of those points. Oops, that wasn't what I wanted to move. Let's try that again. Try to get this little tiny line. There we go. Okay, and we're going to label it y equals 3/4 x minus 2. Now listen, your test has graphing on it. If you forget to label all the lines, it's like throwing away 10 percentage points on this test. You cannot afford to do that. You've got to label your line. The reason is, eventually, don't write this down, but eventually we're going to draw another one on the same graph, and I've got to be able to tell which one is which. So please make sure that you label your lines. Now, that's the last one that's a traditional line. So does anybody have any questions before we move on? Okay, the next two are Hoy and Bucks, guys. These are going to be your special cases. Here we go. Let's make sure you understand these. For the Hoy and Bucks lines, first of all, we'll start with the Bucks. How do I know this is a Bucks? Because it has what letter in it? X. Every Bucks line is going to have X equals a number with no Y in it. Buck stands for vertical line, undefined slope, X equals a number. So we know it's going to be a vertical line already. Okay? In a Bucks line, it has a slope that is already given to us from this acronym. It is undefined. However, it does not have a y-intercept. It is actually going to have an x-intercept, because instead of crossing the y-axis, it's going to cross the x-axis. So instead of being 0 and a number, it's going to be a number then 0. Guys, what's the number going to be? -2. How do I know it's -2? Because right here it tells me that x is always going to be -2. Guys, you're going to go on the x-axis to -2. That's the point, -2, 0. It's right here. When you graph Hoy and Bucks lines, listen to me, don't waste your time. You need 1 point. 1 point, literally, 1 point. To graph this 1 point, all you do is take your ruler and draw a vertical line directly through that, all the way through your graph. It has to extend all the way through your graph, guys, because eventually on inequalities that we graph, we're going to be shading a side of the graph. So I need it to extend all the way past the edges. It's going to be very important that you learn to do that. I will take points off on your test. Okay? And you're going to label it. It's going to be x equals negative 2. Does anybody have any questions about the Bucks line? Guys, most of y'all can figure out how to do the next one because it's a Hoy line. It's going to be the same thing, just going the other direction. Let's see if we can get this one. Okay, here we go. This is going to be guys, how do I know the difference between this and the equation that was in number 3? Why do I know that number 4 is a Hoy line and that number 2 is not? Because there's no what? No x. Because this is only the y-intercept, I also heard. Guys, there's no slope. There's no x. There's no y equals mx. It's just y equals a number. If it's y equals a number, it's going to be a Hoy line, which tells me that it is going to be a horizontal line with a slope of 0, and that the y-intercept in this case is going to be 6. So you're going to go, guys, on your test, just so you know, I'm asking for these. I'm not just doing this for fun. You're going to have to give these answers before you graph. So in order to graph this, you have to have this information anyway. So I'm checking this also. Can you pull it out correctly? So from here, you're starting off at 0, 6. That's on the y-axis right here. How many points do I need for a Hoy or Bucks line? 1, literally, 1. And then you take your ruler and you draw a horizontal line through that point, extending it all the way through your graph, and you write your equation on your line, outside of the grid so I can see it. Alright. Does anybody have any questions about graphing? You need to ask me now before we move on to your assignment if you have any. Okay, guys.